Okay, we can start. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the October 14th Public Works Meeting Committee to order. Rose, could you please take a roll?
Councilwoman Marino. Present. Councilwoman Mazzulli.
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas. Councilman Riley. Council Vice President Ferry.
Present.
Council President Paplaskas.
Present.
Okay. May I entertain a motion to approve and dispense with the reading of the prior month's meetings minutes?
So moves.
Second.
Rose, could you please take a roll?
Councilwoman Marino.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli.
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, we would like to cover committee business matters carried over. First, we have Ordinance 72108, Ordinance and Amendment of Chapter 12 of the Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places, Street Paving, sponsored by Councilman Donegan and Councilwoman Marino. This is continued from 9/15/21. Motion?
Motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
Yes. Yes, you may.
Ken Mason, Director of Public Works. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this ordinance, but I would implore you to try to do one thing. And in the third line, it says to be paved during the corresponding budget fiscal year. If you could please make that calendar year, because we do not make lists up by fiscal year, because that would go from July and it would end up being a half of one construction season and a half of another construction season. And, you know, we just don't prepare a list like that. Notwithstanding that, you know, the list that we prepare over the winter, typically that list contains a lot more roads than we're actually physically going to pave during the next year. And roads get knocked off, they get added. And I would be very hesitant to publish a list, especially again for the general public to see a list of roads that we are looking to pave, and then people will wonder why it didn't get paved, call me and complain that it didn't get paved, and I'll just end up having them call the particular council person. One example and point that worked out quite well for us this year was Councilwoman Vargas contacted me in the spring and asked me which roads we were planning on paving in her ward. I sent her over a list of streets, and she requested that I change those and do a different section of the city, which we did. And everything worked out very well. Everybody was reasonably happy with it. But if that list had been published, the 6 or 7 streets that we were initially planning on paving, you probably would have gotten phone calls for it, for them. They weren't paved. So those are my comments on it. This was always a policy decision that the previous administration had held, that they didn't want to publish a proposed list, and I can see the reason why. They always were amenable to sitting down with each individual council person just to get their input on what roads they would like to see paved. So whether an ordinance is needed like this, I really don't know. That's up to you folks.
Councilman Donegan, do you want to make any comments? Councilwoman Marino?
Thank you. Thank you, Director Mason. Just to provide you with a little insight as to what happened the previous meeting when you were away, we specifically continued it so that you could have some input on this, obviously. And the intent we had expressed at that time, and I'll repeat again, is to set the time frame for the reporting at a time that's convenient for you to not be as burdensome. So we don't, I don't, Councilman Donegan could speak to this as well, but so I don't have any issue with changing it for the list to be representing on line 27 for the corresponding budget calendar year. But then what I would seek some input from you on is with respect to the timing of producing the actual list. I understand what you stated this evening, but I do think that this provides for a lot of transparency. You yourself had stated that, when Councilwoman Vargas reached out to you, you were able to give her the list, work through that. By doing something like this, you wouldn't even have to do that. Everyone would know. And the other portion of this ordinance allows for, at the end of the time period, which we can work out as to when that's most convenient to report on, there will be a report as to which lists were paved. If you would like at that time to provide a simple explanation as to why the ones were not paved, we can simply do that too. But I do still feel that this ordinance is beneficial to the residents, and I think that it would be a good step in transparency. Thanks.
Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Director Mason, for what you offered earlier. I share the sentiments of my colleague, Councilwoman Marino, and appreciate your insights as always. Personally open to, having your comments and suggestions to make it so it's not an additional burden to you, something that's can be formulated and put together as easily as possible. I appreciate, as always, as you extended to Councilwoman Vargas this year, and as you've extended to me personally in the past, your openness and willingness to discuss what streets are being done, and certainly perhaps pivot at times on what is getting worked on. And I think that can still happen. It just, maybe that conversation happens a few weeks or months before the list goes out to kind of solidify or get a better idea of what streets in each area are going to get done. But I do think that this would add, having this on the books would add some clarity for the public and for the council to know, what the money is being used for that's coming before us in the budget. And then on the back end, having a full picture of what is actually getting done.
Thank you. Councilwoman Renzulli.
I'm just wondering, would it be helpful if this was like a live document, like some kind of Google Doc, or if there's something more secure? So as things change, the administration can just change it and people aren't confused as to, they can see it happening live if they want to check if their street's going to be getting done or not. I know that other municipalities, I've seen them do it on a map almost, so people know, when they can see it visually, what's getting done when. And I don't know if that would alleviate people coming back. Oh, hey, why wasn't my street being done? They saw a change and, can figure it out.
Thank you. Councilwoman Jermaine.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to echo the sentiment of Councilwoman Marino and Councilman Donegan for the ordinance, because as a new council person, I have received so many calls, and we have resident that says their street haven't been paved for 30 years. I have resident tell me 30 years, and I don't have the answer. So if we have something, a narrative that tell them this is the rationale behind why your street haven't been paved. So I think the transparency, we all in the same page, that will help all of us to do the work. So that's why I'm not in the committee, but I really hope that you pass this ordinance tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Council President Paplaskas.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Director Mason, once you facilitate the list that you have now and you're getting ready to work on the roads, or you know, it's getting closer, how often does the list change due to utility work or that sort of thing where you have to pivot to a different neighborhood or a different area, or hold off?
Well, we typically, I've started working on next year's paving list already. And one of the first things I do, I'll look through our pavement management study and pick out the roads that are in need of paving. Typically, any road that's rated less than 60 right now. We have all the roads rated from 0 to 100, and I typically don't want to pave anything that's over 60. We come up with an initial list. I try to stay in and do neighborhoods at a time. I don't like to do one-off streets, you know, all over the place. But I make sure we take and do streets in every ward. Every ward will get streets paved. We usually go by the pavement condition index, and then also the functional classification of the road. You know, if it's a main road that's rated 55 and it's a side street that's a cul-de-sac that's rated 60, we'll do the main road, you know, all day long. And then what we usually do, or what we always do, is we'll submit this list of proposed roads to our utilities, mainly National Grid Gas and Providence Water. And they'll send their comments back. You know, I had a section of the city, I don't want to tell what it is, but I wanted to pave probably 10 roads in that city. Got back from Providence Water that, no, they're looking to do a water main cleaning and lining project in 2024. So I'm going to stay out of there. It's going to be another 2 or 3 years, but then we'll go in. And then, you know, one of my last things is, you know, obviously constituent requests. We get requests all the time from constituents through the mayor's office, and also council people's requests.
Just one follow-up question. If this ordinance passes, does it take any flexibility away from you or hamstrung you in doing the work that you normally do? Can you work around this? Because I do think that it's a good ordinance. I just don't want to hurt your department doing the work.
No, it won't affect us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any, Councilman Donning, Councilwoman Vargas.
Sorry, just for the record, through the chair, if I can just be marked as present.
Oh, yes. Rose, could you please mark present Councilman Riley and Councilwoman Vargas? Thank you. Council President Paplaskas.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make the amendment that Director Mason had requested. Make that in the form of a motion, that we change it. Which line is it? 27, 29, 30. Lines 29, 27, and 30, insert calendar year. Councilman Marino, do you have it?
Yeah, I just want to just for clarity's sake, if I may, to Director Mason, are you okay with the first line where it's going to be submitted at the time of the operating budget, or is that a bad time for you?
No, that's fine. The timing is fine.
So, okay, so it's just the calendar year. Got it.
That's the motion.
So we have to withdraw the other motion?
Well, we can do the amendment and then vote on the amendment and then vote
Okay.
on the amended ordinance.
All right. So Rose, do you have the amendment? Okay. Need a motion?
I made the motion. I think we just need a second.
Second.
Rose, please take roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes. Now we need to vote
Now
on
we need to,
the ordinance as amended.
motion to vote on the ordinance as amended.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion? Who made the motion? Who seconded?
Motion, yeah, we have a motion to approve the ordinance as
Who-
amended.
Who seconded it?
I'll second it.
What?
No one has seconded.
Can I second it?
I'll second it.
All right. Rose, please take the roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Okay. Now we have to, we're all set with that?
That's it.
Okay, very good. Second here is 72116 ordinance and amendment of chapter 8.12 of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Health and Safety, sponsored by Councilwoman Vargas. Councilwoman Vargas?
Thank you. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is not working. So just from here. Yeah, so this ordinance that's for us, which is garbage collection and disposal. Thank you. I am going, so if we recall last month, I had it continue for this month because I was going to be doing an amendment. So I will be substituting the amended language with what was previously presented. And I have a copy that I'm not sure that you'll have, but I can provide you a copy. Those that don't have one. So the idea behind this, as I had mentioned last month, and I'll actually touch upon it once again, is to make sure that where there is a private residential establishment of at least 5 units or more, that their dumpster are actually picked up on time. They're not overflowing. And if we have an ordinance in the books, as we currently do for residents, we should definitely have one as well for those that have at least a 5-unit or more complex as well. I'm also asking that the dumpsters, those that are being picked up by whether a private company, that they be covered, that the name and address and telephone number of these commercial waste haulers be placed on the dumpster. I've driven around the city. It seems like most of them already do that already. I just want to make sure that we have that covered on here as well. And I'm pretty much kind of mirroring, I believe, the dumpster pickup, from 7 to 5 p.m., which is, I believe, it's within our ordinance on the city trash pickup. So happy to discuss further, answer any questions that I have, but I am pretty much just amended the language that I had mixed use on the last one and just replacing that with the actual residential commercial apartment.
Does anyone have any comments? No, Councilman Donegan.
Just want to say, first and foremost, this is really good work. Thank you, Councilwoman, for bringing this forward, and for putting this together.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt for just a brief minute, I apologize. If you're going to consider the substituted bill, you need to take a motion on that before you have discussion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Rose, please take the roll on the substituted. Correct?
No, I think we just get a motion and a second to accept the substitute.
Accept the
then we
substitute.
discuss the substitute.
Rose, please take a roll.
No roll this
The
time.
roll is necessary.
No, we're going to discuss the ordinance that's in front of us, the substitute.
And I apologize for my own ignorance on this subject. Is recycling also required?
If I may?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. That's an interesting point. Recently, this past summer, I had visited a commercial complex, and I asked that question whether or not they do recycle. And I don't think they do. And it's something worth actually looking into because some of the residents who I reached out to, and I think maybe Councilman Renzulli was with me when we asked, and I believe their answer was no, and that they would actually love to. So my hope is that if either this passes or if we add it as on here, I don't know, I'm going to be honest with you, what pushback or what we can do as far as control over like a private, waste hauler, taking away the dumpsters. But definitely all ears if there's any suggestions or anything along those lines, or perhaps the director may know if that's something that we are able to actually enforce on the recycling side of it.
I don't believe we have anything in our codes. DEM does have a state law. I believe there's a state law that requires commercial facilities to recycle. I don't believe anybody has any enforcement capabilities. I've asked DEM before and they don't have any enforcement police going around checking businesses. And I don't believe we have it in our ordinances either.
Thank you. I guess, kind of to add a little bit on that, not to delay the conversation, but if that was, you may know this, but if there was a residential private commercial building that did want to recycle, I would assume they would know the lay of the land and how to go about that, or would they have to go through the city to actually ask how that would work?
No, they should know exactly how to recycle. There's no reason they couldn't.
Okay.
It would just be an additional expense for them.
Thank you. Definitely open to suggestions on that. I know recycling is obviously something that we should all be doing and definitely be doing more of. And I do want to just point out one last thing on this actual ordinance. The idea behind this as well is not just to enforce the picking up of the waste and all those overflowing trash, but a lot of that, if this happens, will hopefully reduce the rodents and have some more rodent control around the city as well. So that's really where I was also going with this, not just enforcement accountability, but making sure that we can also help with the rodent control. Thank you.
Is anyone else? Director Mason?
Yeah, I just had one last comment. I think you have a conflict at the very end of this ordinance. Line 64 says all dumpsters shall be serviced between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Our city code section 8.12.020 has that as 10 p.m., not 5 p.m. And also has fines in that same section of $200, not $100 and $300. You just might want to check with your section.
Sure, Director, if I may, the timing on that trash pickup, does that apply then for the city to go and pick up trash at residential properties up until 10 p.m. as well?
I don't know about the 10 p.m., but I know they're allowed to start earlier than 7 p.m. They're allowed to start at 6:30
a.m. And stop at?
I am not sure if there's an end time on that. But what they do is, they're required to function when the landfill is open. That's their big queue. And the landfill is only open from 7 to 3, I believe, or 7 to 3:30.
I might have a point of information on that, why it's 10. I think it had to do with our noise ordinance. I think that's why it's set for 10.
The only reason I did add actually from 7 to 10 is under section 8.12.120, placing rubbish trash upon highway prior to collection. It has the time from 6:30. It does have 6:30 a.m., but it has it till 5 p.m. So I mirrored what we had in our ordinance and make it the same time on this new proposed ordinance as well.
I think the rest of the commercial is from 7 o'clock. I believe it's 7 a.m. Residential that Waste Management picks up starts at 6:30. I don't know about the end times for either one of
Okay,
them.
if I can propose then a motion then to where on line 64 and have it say all dumpsters shall be serviced only between the hours of 6:30 a.m. Until 5 p. Sorry, 7 o'clock actually, because I think the 7 o'clock does start though, because landscaping, everything does start at 7. Sorry, I know I'm putting a motion out, but it is 7, right?
The commercial starts at 7, yes. So that should stay,
Then
that
just
should
say
stay
way
the
it
same.
is Then,
That should
okay.
stay the same. I was questioning the 5 PM because that section 8.12.020 has 10 PM. And I just wanted to point that out.
All right, well, I'm open to suggestions and any comments from my fellow council colleagues if they have any objections to going a little later.
I have no objection. I think setting it to 10 PM to match the other part of the code, I think works. We're not going to see waste haulers working past the dump time anyway.
Director Mason, it is
Okay.
currently 10 PM.
If
That's
I- If I
correct.
may, through the chair. Through the chair.
Councilwoman Marino?
Our ordinance 8.12.020 states actually that no person shall pick up or remove, nor shall any person cause or allow to be picked up or removed any refuse, rubbish, or trash from any commercial or industrial establishment between the hours of 10 PM and 7 AM. So implicit in that means that you can pick it up between 7 AM and 10.
Right.
Okay, so then I will then, I know I initially had started a motion. I'll withdraw that if that actually ended up putting through. And instead, my motion will be all dumpsters shall be serviced only between the hours of 7 AM and 10 PM.
Second,
Any questions? Comments? Need to vote on that?
just need to vote on the amendment.
Rose, let's please vote on the amendment.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
I have a second motion in line 65, and that is to increase then the fine from $100 to $200. So we can mirror what Director Mason had just mentioned.
second,
Rose, please take the roll. Oh, I have to ask if there's any questions. Any questions, comments? Please take the roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
yes,
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, so now we need a motion.
nope,
Yes.
Thank you. I just had 2 points, 2 questions. On line 52, where it says, all dumpsters shall be screened or fenced or shrubbery, so that's not visible from the street. Is, to the sponsor, is that something you took from any other ordinance, or is that specific to this one?
I believe I did, and, I should have taken my notes on here as I'm quickly searching the code of ordinance, but I believe that is, if they have a setback on there, there shouldn't be a reason why there's not a shrubbery or someone visible at all from the lot itself.
Okay. No, I agree. We want to keep it as aesthetic as possible. I just also want to be cognizant of costs to the private landlords. So that kind of leads me to my second question, which is the frequency of once a week as a standard. Is that something that came? Because I just think that there'll be different size buildings. Some places may need it every 2 weeks, some may need it twice a week, but there's a cost for that every time. So, and that's going to fall on the landlord. So I just wanted to try to minimize any expense while keeping this initiative in place.
Yeah,
Councilwoman Vargas.
thank you. So yes, through the chair to answer. These ones, so if they need it twice a week, at least that once a week will actually cover it. Given the current situation, the huge amount of rodent issues that we've been having in the city, to be quite honest with you, I really would hope that if we have at least 5-unit building residential property in our city, that the trash is collected, especially on the size of a dumpster, at least once a week, particularly if they're not even recycling. I can only imagine the amount of waste that is going through here. Definitely open to, and welcome to suggestions later on, see how this works, and then we can work on it later on. But for the time being, I really do prefer at least once a week. If they want to do it twice, at least it's already covered, but just my thought on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And my last point was just about the recycling, and if Director Mason, if you could, in residential properties throughout the city, even above 4 units, the actual tenants there, they can come before the city and obtain their own recycle bin, can they not?
Well, they won't get them from the city. They'd
I
have to,
apologize, waste management.
they would have, well, no, they would have to provide, whoever their particular waste hauler, could be Butler, could be in Republic, whoever they use, they would have to provide them the recycling containers.
So if there's a 6-unit residential building, they do not get city garbage pickup for that?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you. I apologize.
Well, with the exception of condominiums get serviced by the city. There was, that changed probably 20 or 30 years ago. I believe there was a lawsuit that was involved in that whole thing. And condominiums do get picked up. And at condominiums, we do provide, Waste Management does that also, and we do provide recycling containers for condominiums. But for commercial establishments, and if it's a 5-unit apartment building or 6 or 8-unit apartment building, no, that's all on the commercial side, and they would have to provide their own.
Thank you so much. Nothing further.
Any other comments, questions? Are we done with the amendments?
I am.
Okay. Now we need to vote. Rose, please take a roll on the ordinance.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone either online or in council chambers. Sorry, Councilman Donegan. You have a question? Okay. Is there anyone in council chambers or online that has, please raise your hand if you have any public comments on any of the docketed
For Public Works.
for Public Works, not for ordinance, for Public Works. We are still in the Public Works meeting. Those of you that are here for the ordinance meeting, we are running a little late. So is there anyone here that has any comments for the Public Works meeting docketed items?
I see no public comment.
Okay, let's move on. Next on the agenda is status of leaks, repairs to Kinder Morton National Grid main gas line on easement off of Natick Avenue. Councilwoman Marino?
Thank you. Director Mason, I understand from the previous meeting, Director McCauley had represented that the work was completed. Is that in fact your understanding as well?
Yes, there was a grade 3 gas leak on that section of pipe, and they ended up fixing that, repairing it in August, the end of August. It ended up being a little bit more complicated than they wanted to have it, and they ended up replacing, I believe, a 6-foot length of pipe, but that's why it took so long.
I know, and as you mentioned, it took longer than expected, and every time, I guess, people were under the impression it was done, then it was resurrected again, and it being a high-pressure line on a narrow road, it was concerning. And the inconsistent information was not any fault of yours. I understand, it's a bit unpredictable. You make a repair, you expect it to work, and that may not happen. But we just want to be certain to convey to the residents that the project as planned is at least complete, and they don't have any foreseeable plans to make any repairs for the rest of the year, unless obviously there's some unforeseeable incident. Is that fair?
That's correct. They're finished with that project.
And the only other question I have is, should this occur again, where it's something like as you know, this was on weekend nights. It was after 11 o'clock at night. There was, the road was blocked off. There were heavy lights. It was, I had driven to the area and saw it myself. In the future, if that were to occur, should the procedure be where reach out to you to get an answer as to what the status is, because you'll then have contact with the appropriate person at National Grid?
Yes, absolutely. You can either, well, I mean, I guess the protocol is to go directly to administration, but
Include you on the email,
Yeah.
fair enough? Okay,
yes.
all right, thank you.
Director Mason, you might as well stay right there. Next on the agenda is there an update on the Park Avenue Bridge? Councilwoman Vargas.
Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, just, I decided to leave this on the agenda for this month. Last month, we had DOT. They pretty much had said to us the project wasn't going to. I decided to leave this again on the agenda for this month. I reached out to DOT last month. They told me that the project was expected to conclude mid-September. Clearly, it hasn't. They don't even think it's going to be done by December because of the Amtrak's situation as far as timing and coming into an agreement as far as what time they can actually go in and start repairing on the bridge. Any new updates at all? Is there anything that we can do as a city to send letters, whether it's to DOT director, Amtrak, just anything to expedite this?
Well, actually, I just spoke to the project manager for Etna Bridge on this. I met him out at the bridge today. They've made some progress, but from September 1st to today's date, they've only been able to work on the bridge on 12 days, and they average 2.1 hours per day. That's all the time that they've been allotted by Amtrak to get onto the bridge and actually do the work. I believe the best guess for opening the bridge to vehicular traffic would be this spring, March or April, and the project to be 100% complete probably later in the summer.
Thank you so much. If you just want to keep us abreast of any new developments on that end, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update on Mechanic Lake Park and Pond Evasive Lotus. Council President Paplaskas.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing really to add today, other than a couple of days ago, the Lotus was sprayed again with a chemical treatment. Does look like the Lotus is wilting, so hopefully that works. Time will tell next year to see how strong the Lotus comes back. That's all we have for updates. There was a great article in the Cranston Herald, which also had a lot of updates in it this week. Director Mason, do you have anything to add other than that? We can take this off the docket for now till we get more updates. Thank you.
Okay. Director Mason, the next two items put on by me, and what I'm really looking for is, are we coming up with a long-term plan to stop the flooding on Wilbur Avenue and also on Cranston Street? I know that it's a problem. I know it's the state's issue. I know it's Oak Lawn Avenue, but it seems to be that this has been going on forever. And every time we get a lot of rain, somebody loses their car. And I just wonder, are we in conversation with the state to solve this problem like once and for all? If we start now, maybe in 2 years, it'll be solved. So that's just basically why I have this on the agenda. And I do get complaints from two constituents on Cranston Street every time we get a flash flood. One cellar gets flooded and the other lady's yard gets flooded. So, and she's been here to testify too. She was here last month. And I'd like to know if we're coming up with a long-range plan to solve these two problems.
Well, the flooding on Cranston Street, that's an issue that the city partially rectified. The pipe that leads underneath Cranston Street was partially clogged with the trees and some branches. We cleared that out. There is another issue further down the line that we need to get back into, and we do have plans to look into that. That's something that the city could undertake with its own, not with its own forces, but with its own bond fund money for storm drain. As far as the flooding on Wilbur Avenue, we're in the process of searching for money to be able to at least attempt to address that problem. I mean, there's several different thoughts on the whole thing. And one of the things that you cannot do is you can't just increase the size of the pipe that discharges to the Mechanic Brook. You're just not allowed to do that type of thing anymore. It would have to be some offline stormwater storage. My whole proposal would be to take the railroad bridge down and put a nice arched bridge over it, and then raise Wilbur Avenue where it bellies underneath it, and you could get rid of the flooding that way. Again, that's a big ticket item. We are looking to possibly get some grant money to look into that further.
Thank you. As far as Cranston Street goes, can I give the residents any kind of a timeline as to when we're going to maybe start to solve the problem?
6 months.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. We have new matters before the committee. Okay, we have two poll requests from National Grid, one on Lincoln Avenue and one at Meadow Lock Drive. I personally drove out to both of those locations today, and they just look like they're necessary, and they're not obstructing anybody's driveway or house or as far as I know. And I know that Public Works does check these spots out ahead of time. So I'd like to have a motion to approve the first request for Lincoln Avenue.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Rose, please take a roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
And I'd like to have a motion to approve the second request for the pole location at Meadow Lock Drive.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Rose, please take a roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is from the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, a surplus state land offer. Is someone from the administration here to represent that cause?
That's a property on Norfolk Street, right in back of the Burger King. And apparently it used to be a group home run by the state, and it's surplus property. And I guess they've got a proposal or some purchase and sales agreement to sell that building. It's really a house for $300,000. And I guess by state law, we have the option to take it for $300,000 if we so choose to. I don't see any need or use for that house, and I would not recommend exercising that option.
Anyone in the council have any comments on that?
Can we sell it for more?
What's that?
She said, can we sell it for more? I checked out where the property was, and it's not next to a school, it's not next to a playground, it's not next to any city property, whereas that may have made it something attractive to us, but I personally would not be in favor of purchasing that property at this time.
Yeah,
Council President Paplaskas?
Just to add, I read the letter. If we don't take any action in 30 days, there's no offer anyways. So I'll just make a motion to remove this from the docket. We don't have to take any action if we don't want to.
And there's a motion on the floor to remove this from the docket. Do we have a second?
Second.
Rose, please take a roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry, Council President
Yes.
Paplaskas.
Yes.
Before we adjourn, I'd like to thank Director Mason for being here to answer all these questions tonight. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Please take a roll. Oh, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is closed.
We'll take a 10-minute break and come back to start the ordinance meeting. Good evening, everyone. If we can call the ordinance committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Present.
Councilman Riley,
Present.
Council President Paplaskas.
Present.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
All right, tonight we have a few matters to handle that were carried over from the last meeting. First is ordinance 5-21-07. Pedestrian control signal sponsored by Councilwoman Jermaine. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Woman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. Oops. I would like to give a little background for this ordinance. Because we have a report from the Department of Public Works that deny the recommendation. So let me start why I propose this amendment. So since I was appointed July 2020, I have been receiving emails from residents around Park Ave and Grace, Park Avenue and Grace Street. And I have those emails, but they say they cannot come to the meetings but they send me emails. But because they don't come to the meetings, probably that's an issue for not having this heard properly, but I do think as their representative, I am their voice. So they don't need to be here because they elect me to be their voice. So to bring the issue for them. And what was the issue is the speeding, how we can combat the speeding, how we can prevent fatalities. So first action I took, I said, okay, let's put a stop sign. That was the first attempt. And Director Mason emailed me, says, because of the law, Director Mason, because of the law of highways law, we cannot have a stop sign. I say, okay, what we can do next? I propose to have, because this part of the city is very, there's a big traffic there. There is this restaurant, there is Dollar Trees, we have elderlies, and we have a bus stop right in the corner, so we have children. And we said, we need to do something. So when I propose, after I withdraw the ordinance for stop sign, I propose to have this, what we call, there is a name for it. If in the analysis says chapter 1008/030, specifically and exclusively reference pedestrian control signal. Pedestrian control signal that display the word work, wait, or don't work. So that's what I proposed before. After I proposed that, there was discussion that will cost so much money for the city. And I had a conversation with Director Mason. And also there was mention that for distance purposes and for the cost purposes, we cannot have this because the money was $100,000 to have this device to help reduce the speed. So again, I come up with a compromise because I believe in compromise. So we can negotiate as long as we have the result we need. So when I spoke to Director Mason, he says, there is something else we can do. And, this is not my area expertise. I don't know the name really well. But when he was talking, I said, why we don't do that? Because will cost less money. And for me, at the hearings we have for the budget, we raised the issue again, and he proposed, actually I have the name right now, pedestrian actuated conspicuity enhancement, so fancy words. He said, we can have that. I said, it's not in the book. We do not have the name on the book. I said, why if we have it, we can just ask it, and there's gonna be budget for that. So my understanding at that moment, we do not have the language for this in the book. And that's why I propose to have the language. Anytime someone needs this device to be put up, there is no issue where we're going to have the money, what's gonna happen. So the solution I'm looking for. So that's why I want to give you the background. That's why I proposed the amendment to have, probably I did not put the right language, pedestrian. I put electronic crossing signal or rapid flashing crosswalk signal. So as language to put on. But in the analysis, and I have to mention, I see the irony in the analysis, but at least they understand what I mean. In the analysis, this is exactly what Director Mason told me. So, but it is denied. The amendment is denied. And also, in the conclusion, he said, the analysis continued to say that we denied it because we have the language already. It is referred as, if you read it, it is referred, what I proposed, I think the scientific name is rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That stands for RRFB. So now, at the end of the analysis, said fiscal impact, cost of RRFB, equipment and associated civil work, including ADA, I don't know what does that mean, compliant curb ramps, ADA, I don't know what does that mean. So at a typical location is approximately $17,100. So we come from $100,000. We said we can do it. It's too expensive, and I agree. It's so expensive. Now we have 17,100, it's still too expensive. So it is denied. My conclusion is the narrative before to have the first one I was asking that was cost $100. There was the distance problem. they talk about, that was not an issue. Distance is not an issue. So I have some example where I saw those RFB. We have intersection when we said distance is not an issue. Let me show you. I do some research, go around. We have intersection, for example, Dyer and Parker. We have right the traffic light, right at the corner of Domino's, we have our RRB. And then right after we have intersection, Cranston and Park Ave, we have another light. So tell me first what was told first, the distance to have RRB in Cranston, in Park Ave and Grace is too close of intersection Wolf Square and Park Ave. This is not okay. This is BS side, BS, because distance is not an issue. So my question is, really, I don't know what the issue are. I don't know. The money, my question, how much do you, anyone who make this analysis, think how much a life costs? How much you can put on the life loss? That's the question I ask. Do you have a number? Because if we are waiting for the number of deaths we need to take action, so I would like to know how much you put on the life, on somebody who is dead. Do you have a price? So that's why I urge you to vote for this ordinance, because this doesn't mean anything for me, because it doesn't hold on. It doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Does anyone else have any comments? Director?
Ken Mason, Director of Public Works. The city has no issues putting rapid flashing crosswalk signals throughout the city. The last time I was up here talking about it, you wanted to get a fiscal impact on it, which we've given you by this analysis, about $17,100 per crosswalk signal. That includes redoing the ADA handicap ramps and making it fully legal. The problem that I have with this ordinance is you're trying to put it in a regulatory section of the code. These are not regulatory, these are warning, and they really shouldn't be in our city code. We have warning signals all over the city, including the rapid flash crosswalk, the speed feedback devices, and they are not codified anywhere in our books. I have no problem putting one in at Grayson Park, and we'll do that, but you really shouldn't, this should not be an ordinance that's on the books as regulatory, because it's not. They're considered warning. That's it.
Director Mason, to the chair.
Council Vice President?
So if you say you don't have a problem putting them in and that you don't want it to be an ordinance that forces it in, then how does Councilwoman Jermaine succeed in getting this done at that intersection? That's my question.
I would suggest she ask the administration for us to do it, and we could do it.
And if they say no, then she wants to do it through an ordinance. So I think it's going to go back and forth. So can it be done without an ordinance? That's the question.
Yes, it can, and it should be done without an ordinance, especially a regulatory section of the codes.
Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Councilman Riley. Director Mason, thank you again for being here this evening. Is there sufficient funding available to fund the $17,100 that it would cost to put one of these at Grayson Park Ave?
Yes, you folks approved $100,000 for traffic calming devices for this fiscal year. And to date, I believe we've only done the Peveril Road bump outs, which some people like, some people hate, and that only cost $25,000. So there's money in the budget.
Continue.
How long would the installation of something like this take?
Well, the installation would probably only take a week. We just have to order the equipment. That might take a couple of months.
Whether it's through Director Mason or anyone else from the administration, if there's sufficient funding available, it seems like everyone is in agreement that this is probably a decent location for one. Can we commit tonight to getting this done?
I can commit, yes.
If I may, Council President.
Yeah, I just had a suggestion in the past when the council might have requested devices like this. If we couldn't get it done for whatever reason, we could pass a resolution, which is the will of the council, asking the administration to put it in. With this being a warning device or not regulated by code, maybe that might be the way to go, but I'm happy to hear that it will go up. So whether or not we pass this tonight, I don't really know if we need to. Certainly support it, but I do have to agree with warning signs go up across the city all the time and none of them are codified by code. So I do have to agree with that point. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councilwoman Jermaine, this is for the Gray Street and Park Street, correct? Okay, I'm just making sure. So I am not sure if we vote on this ordinance before us this evening, do we have to put the location as to where it's going? Or do we keep it generalized the way it is, where it states streets and locations where needed?
This is what it needed, because I am like really tired, like to beg for something that needs to be done. So if we have it in the books, we know we are required to do it. That's why. So why we don't have it, I would like to know to the solicitor, is a violation of the charter to not have it in the code, or we cannot make an amendment? Where do we stand here?
You're asking for a legal opinion?
Yes, to the solicitor.
Thank you. I agree with what Director Mason had to say with respect to codifying this. You know, it is not a traffic control device. I'm not going to reiterate what he said. But by the same token, I've heard the debate on the floor, and I agree with the council president that if this is not done, then the council can certainly resolve as a body to do it and accomplish it. That also said, I think you have a firm commitment from Director Mason tonight to get it done. And you can certainly keep it on your agenda in Public Works, as you have with other things, to monitor the progress of its installation from ordering the parts to putting the shovel in the ground. Does that seem reasonable? That would be my proposed solution, which I suppose is a non-legal solution, Mr. Chairman. But, you know, to answer your initial question, you know, it's not a traffic control device, it's a warning device, and the director is correct on that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Vargas.
Thank you. Councilwoman Jermaine. One. Sorry, one side is Ward 1, the other 2. If I can, it's obviously your ordinance, but if we can, given the fact, and not to reiterate what our city solicitor said, would you be open to, given the fact that Director Mason gave his word that he'll be working on this and he will be able to do it, would you be open to say, you know, let's give him 2 months, or I don't know how long it takes, so that way take his word and integrity for it? Or is that something that you instead want to maybe do through a resolution as opposed to an ordinance? I don't know if we are able to vote on it. I mean, I support putting one up, but if the director's giving his word for it, I think, perhaps we might be able to take him up on it, but I defer to you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I have to mention, I'm always open. I always think we can do things together, listen to each other to do things. Also, I'm also want to see accountability. Because one thing we have here, a resolution, we know a resolution is a will, it's not binding. So whatever administration it is, if they don't want to do it, you don't have anything to really, or no oversight, nothing to really constrain them to do it. We cannot do it to a resolution. So that's something I want everybody to understand that. You cannot make a resolution to tell the administration to do something. It's a will we talked about it last month. A resolution is a will. It's a suggestion. So this is like, I would like you to do, but you don't have any power to tell people to do a resolution. So we agree on that one. So if the only power you have as a council is the ordinance. So now if there is a conflict to the charter, you can have the ordinance because of the charter, there is a conflict, I will understand that, okay? But I agree, I can take Director Mason on his words, he can be done, but I will come back with it if it's not done, because I'm not giving up on that. I promise those people that email me all the time, I said, I am not giving up. And this is how many attempts I have with this one? This is my 4th one. So I took every time, okay, I said, yes, let's do it, okay? So I will take this pause, I give, okay, let's say 2 months or 3 months. Director Mason, how many months you think that can be done? 2 months, okay. So 2 months, okay, let's take a pause. Yes.
If I can, through the chair,
Councilwoman.
sorry. If I can open, provide suggestion, then add it to the Public Works
Sure,
Committee agenda for the 2 months.
of course.
In 2 months, I guess, just so you can follow up. That would be my
Yeah,
recommendation.
I would love to do that. Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So can I have a motion? Can I have the council? We need to withdraw the initial motion if she is going to move to continue that.
You can just let it pass, Mr. Chairman, and take a vote to transfer it to Public Works.
Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Renzulli.
Are we under contract with someone, or where's the $17,000 come from? Are we shopping for the best deal, or what's going on?
We have pricing from the manufacturer of the rapid flash crosswalks, and we also have a proposal from one of our contractors to redo the handicap ramps and also install the foundations for these 2 devices.
Okay, thank you.
Director, if I may, just one question. This at the corner of Grace and Park, Councilwoman Jermaine had listed there was one at Dyer and Park, there's one at Cranston and Park. Is this location a location that this device would be useful at, in your expertise?
I think it's warranted, yes.
Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion to have this transferred to the Public Works docket in, what do you say, 3 months? In 2 months.
Second,
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Just for clarification, is the ordinance being referred to the Public Works Committee? Okay. Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
And just a note before we move on, and I apologize for not doing it before this ordinance, but I just wanted to let anyone in the public who is here to speak for or against ordinance 9-21-03, which was sponsored by Councilwoman Renzulli relative to the keeping of chickens. That is going to be withdrawn by the sponsor at this time, and it will not be heard tonight. However, the following ordinance will remain on the docket relative to roosters. So if anyone was here for that, I didn't want you to waste your time. Moving on, we have still carried over from last time, ordinance 5-21-08, sponsored by Councilwoman Jermaine, relative to through trucking prohibited on certain streets. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this ordinance is, as I mentioned earlier, I think June, there was a woman who was hit by a truck at the intersection Aqueduct and Interval. I met with a resident in the neighborhood and they were really heartbreaking. And one thing they all request is to have a sign when you enter Reservoir to Aqueduct to say no truck. So all of them, they are mourning the loss of this woman that was walking her dog. And what they said, she should not have died that way, at that moment, hit by a truck. So that's when the idea to propose this ordinance to have a no truck through when you come from Reservoir to Aqueduct, no truck. So that's why I propose this ordinance. It's being asked by residents in the neighborhood, Aqueduct, Interval, Colonial, and all of them, they were really affected. I met with many, many residents in this area. They were so, because, all people who had dog, everybody knows everybody. You work with dog together. They are friends, family, they work together. So it was really a heartbreaking moment for those residents. And I met with them. I went to the place, even put some flower. So if we can do something to not having a death by truck, death can happen anyways, but that's something we can be proactive, thing we can prevent. So that's why I propose it. Also, it is denied. So I don't know what the issue is. It's to just ask for a sign, say no truck to Reservoir and Aqueduct. So no big truck coming in, because you have right in the corner, there is a, the Cranston, this is a multiple house, have a multiple family, and they say their children cannot play. So the traffic, truck coming, the speed, they cannot even play. And right next door, a few miles, not a lot, you have Budlong Pool when it's open. And you have the school, Eden Park, right? So no truck in this, when you come from Reservoir to go to Aqueduct, that's what it is. It's a request from resident in this neighborhood after the death of this woman by truck. So I really don't know what is the issue, but this is why I propose this ordinance. It's not because I want to put an ordinance. It's a request by resident. Anything I brought here, because I said it and you all say it, you are the voice of a resident. They cannot be here. I am here to advocate on their name. So that's why I propose it. So I request that you pass this ordinance.
Councilman
Thank
Don, oh, thank you. Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Chairman. Councilwoman, I agree with everything you said. Having, grown up just on the other side of Aqueduct Road, across Reservoir Ave, living there, in the area now, it's not a place that trucks should be going. My understanding, after reviewing the code, the traffic engineer's report, is that it is included. This Aqueduct Road is already a prohibited street for trucks to travel on. And from what I'm collecting, from what I'm hearing you saying, is that we need signage. Signage needs to go up. And I think that in my experience, just a couple months ago, Knollwood Avenue, similarly to Aqueduct, is also a no through truck. And I had reached out to Director Paul Smith and the mayor's office, and they were able to get some no truck signs put up. So I think because it's already in the city code, the ordinance, just my opinion, likely isn't necessary. What's necessary is to follow up on the enforcement of that by putting up signs, which, I'm sure, I would hope the mayor's office would be able to assist with.
Thank you, Councilman. Director?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Mr. Donegan. There already is no through trucking codified in section 10.12.210, and there are signs up at that intersection of Aqueduct and Reservoir. And, it's already signed, and we should be all set.
Okay, any other comments on this?
So there's the sign already put up for when you come from the reservoir, you see it, no truck. You see this, there is the sign right there with this picture, no truck coming in. Is that what you said, Doctor? Is there?
Yes, that's the universal sign for no through trucking.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
They're up there.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And Director, if I may, real quick, is there one on the other side of the street coming from the other way on Aqueduct?
I know there's one at Colonial. So I don't, because the Colonial, when you come Colonial is not Aqueduct. What I asked for is when you from Reservoir to Aqueduct. So I did not recall that I see a sign when you are in Reservoir, you're coming to Aqueduct.
Yes, there is signage there.
Okay.
Yes,
All
on
right.
both sides, I believe.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
In light of that new information, Councilwoman Jermaine, did you want to go forward with your ordinance or have that withdrawn at this time?
If it's already there, so I just will withdraw it. So
Okay.
I will follow up with the resident because they are the one that live there. So they are the one that requested. We need signage right there. And I am
Mr.
here
Chair.
to bring the issue.
Council
So
President?
I will visit, and come back. Probably,
Thank you.
yes.
Council President?
Just to help, I pulled up Google Earth and went to both sides of Aqueduct and the signs are up. So, thank you.
All right, great. All right, moving on now to 7-21-11. This is sponsored by Council President Paplaskas for a multi-way stop. I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Council President?
Just real brief, this is a two-way stop now. It's a request from a number of constituents that live at that intersection to change it to a four-way stop. So that's the story behind it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure if you read the traffic engineer's report, but we typically don't recommend these, but we don't typically get listened to on these things, so I've got no problem with it.
Thank you, Director. Madam Clerk?
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilor Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
All right, moving on to 7-21-12, sponsored by Council President Paplaskas, another multi-way stop intersection. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council President?
Same thing, request from constituents, changing from a two-way stop to a four-way stop. And just for the record for Director Mason, I think I do about one of these a term. So we're two tonight, but I won't put any more in this term.
Thank you, Council President. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilor Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Moving on to 7-21-13, sponsored by Council President Paplaskas. This is for a stop intersection at Quail Hollow Drive and Wildberry Drive. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And just for discussion, this is the second half of 721-11. One's removing the two-way stop and one is adding the four-way stop.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilor Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Paplaskas.
Yes.
All right, now we're moving on to the new matters before this night. And if at this time, we're going to take public comment. If there's anyone from the public that wants to be heard on any matters on this docket tonight, other than those that have been withdrawn, feel free to come to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you'll each be given 4 minutes. We'll start with those in council chambers, and then we'll move on to who is joining us over the internet.
Chair, I have one point of information. I think the first two, 8-2101 and 8-2102, need to be continued because I don't think planning has taken any action and set any recommendations to us yet.
Yes, thank you. I will entertain a motion to continue those two matters. to next
Motion
month.
to continue those two matters.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
These are two ordinances. If you, and I'm sure you have, look at Charter Section 3.11, only a council member or the administration, namely the mayor, can sponsor an ordinance. So you just need sponsors for these when they come back before you.
Okay. And Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilor Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Thank you. So now if there's anyone in the chamber that would like to be heard, please feel free to come up to the podium. If you can just give us your name and address for the record.
I want to speak on 92107. Will that be heard tonight?
Yes, it will.
So my name is Joshua Miller. I'm a state senator, but I also live at 41 Talbot Manor, which is about 500 feet from one of the cemeteries that will be impacted by the ordinance 92107. And I will tell you that I've been a state senator since 2007. So that's probably 3 mayors and several governors' administrations who have all tried to approach this issue around how to have better oversight and conditions in private cemeteries. And this is probably the most well-defined and spelt out legislation or ordinance that could address the issues to the conditions of private cemeteries. The fact that it's taken so long is amazing to have an ordinance of this type come before us. And I hope it passes before the cemetery gets any more dangerous than it currently is. And I highly encourage you to consider it and at the proper moment, take action on it. Especially concerned about the structure that is there also, not only the mausoleum, but the building that is about 600 feet from my house, which has been vacant as long as I've lived there, before it becomes either a site of a fire or a overdose or something else. I think it needs to be with this type of ordinance having enforcement where enforcement couldn't exist before, that those kind of conditions could change in the cemetery before we have an incident that we regret.
Or anyone else from the public that would like to be heard? Name and address for the record.
Yes. Okay. My name is Anthony Paolino. I'm here with my wife, Monica. We live at 450 Pippin Orchard Road in Cranston for the past 28 years. And I thank everyone for giving me this opportunity because I've been waiting a long time to address this problem. Since early 2020, my family, which includes my daughters and my grandchildren, have been suffering relentlessly with my next door neighbor's rooster, who starts every day, sometimes as early as 4:30 or 4:15 each morning, and crows on and off all day. The only time he's not crowing is at usually when the sun goes down, and that's probably a 6 or 7 hour period in the summertime. For anyone who's not aware, you can Google it. A rooster's crow can be anywhere from 80 to 110 decibels. I'm doing this research over the past year and a half to try to get some people in the city to help us out with this. The city ordinance for noise ordinance is 50 decibels, but I'm here to speak in favor of 6.08.300, the ordinance to prohibit roosters. This is a daily event for my family, and I'm sure there are others that are affected by it also. I know the neighbors on the other side of my next door neighbor, they're elderly people. They wouldn't come out tonight, but they are in favor of this ordinance also. It's become a health issue with my family for sleep deprivation, more imperative for me because I'm in a stressful profession. I'm a public accountant. I have my office on Reservoir Avenue, and I've been forced to, at this point, to take sleep aids in order to go to sleep. Initially, my neighbor had chickens and his roosters roaming freely all over his property and mine. And I thank the administration, this new administration, when it came in, that they put code enforcement on that and forced him to pen in his animals. It's an impossibility for us to enjoy warmer weather. It sounds crazy, but the windows are shut tight at all times. We can never enjoy, in order to mitigate the noise, we can never enjoy a warm or a cool summer breeze. Always have the AC on. It's life affecting. It sounds crazy. People laugh when I talk about it. One of the reasons for living in Wested Cranston is to have that bit of country life that's close to the city, quiet, cooler. But for us, that's not the case. The city has tried their best. The administration, the police have asked my neighbor. The ACO has been out there more than once to ask him to be a good neighbor And because his rooster pen, the way our houses are, even though the lots there are larger, my house is almost on the property line. So he keeps it probably 60 to 70 feet from our bedroom windows, which are situated in the back of the house. They've all asked him to be a good neighbor, and to no avail. I want people to understand, I had to learn this, and I've done my research. You don't need a rooster in order for a hen to lay eggs. If you weren't aware of it, that is a fact. Baby chicks, for people who want to keep chickens and get fresh eggs, that's fine with me. But the baby chicks you can buy for $5 or less at Tractor Supply. So the only purpose of a rooster is to make little roosters or little chickens, okay? And that's the only purpose they serve. It's got nothing to do with a hen being able to lay an egg, just so people know. So therefore, I find them to be useless other than for a commercial farm, poultry farm, which may have a need for them. My next door neighbor is not a poultry farmer. He's a real estate agent. He has a handful of chickens, a duck, and sometimes as high as 2 roosters, but I think it's now down to 1. One may have gone on to his great reward. I wish this one would move along with him. I'd ask the council to approve this motion or this ordinance. I assume I'm not the only one that has this issue, but if even so, we've suffered long enough with this, and it's very detrimental. I think a basic right for everyone who owns a home or lives in a home is to have quiet enjoyment of their property. We lived there better part of 28 years, never an infraction of any kind. And I always bring this up to the ACO and to other people involved. If you had a barking dog that barked incessantly starting at 4 o'clock in the morning, I actually think there's an ordinance against that, okay? The rooster's crow, believe it or not, it's ear piercing, and you can't believe how loud it is, and it's infinitely louder than the biggest dog you would ever encounter. So I really don't understand the distinction why the ordinance for a barking dog wouldn't apply in this case, but I'm very, very grateful for the mayor for having introduced this ordinance or whomever else in conjunction with the mayor, Councilman Paplowskis, actually. And I really, really plead with the council to pass it. And I think.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to be heard? Mr. Lima, is there anyone online?
Yes, account name Beth.
Hi, Beth. Just please provide your name and address for the record, and feel free to go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Beth Naraki, and I live at 59 Bryant Road. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Paolino for being so eloquent. Eloquent in the way he expressed how a neighbor feels in this situation with roosters in their proximity. I live on the eastern side of Cranston, which you are well aware of is very small properties. We are very close to our neighbors. I could, reach out and touch them if they were walking by my window. So the fact that neighbors are allowed to have these roosters, and when he says 4 o'clock in the morning, it is no exaggeration, 4 o'clock in the morning. I have a dog who hears him whether I do or not, which is a whole other issue. So the piercing noise has affected us for the few months that our neighbor has decided to adopt these pets. And I just ask, where's the common sense and decency? If my son woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and turned on his stereo to the decibel that these roosters crow, the police would be on my door every time he did that. I don't understand anyone who can't understand that this needs to be an ordinance as soon as possible. My husband would like to speak as well.
Yeah, I can verify the noise level of these roosters. And
Excuse me, sir. Sir, just
Yeah.
if you can give your name for the record.
oh, I'm sorry, Richard Naraki, 59 Bryant Road. And I want to just reiterate, like, especially in my side of the city here, and I can't. If he's having problems up in Pippin Orchard Road, you can just imagine how many people in this neighborhood are affected by this. This is, you're talking, you got 20 neighbors, 20 houses that can hear this rooster at all times of day. And again, I also did my homework. You do not need that rooster if you want to raise your farm fresh eggs. We're lucky enough to have several stores close by. I'm not even sure, why that other ordinance got banned, taken off the docket about the hens. But anyway, this is, as a taxpayer, it's like, what am I paying for right here? I don't live out on the farm, and yet this is what I'm putting up with. I chose to live here because I'm a city dweller. I don't want to live out in the country. All right, but I'm experiencing those things that I would have to if I were out there. So I plead with you. I plead with you on behalf of my neighbors who have complained about this. Other neighbors in our neighborhood who have them, that may not have known that this was an ordinance like being heard tonight, but have often complained, just said, why can't they do anything? And so please understand our plight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lima?
I see no other comments at this time.
Yes.
There's another one.
People.
Town name Drake Patton.
Hello, Drake Patton, 684 Natick Avenue in Cranston. I'm a farmer and
Ms. Patton, I'm sorry, could you repeat your address for the record?
84 Natick.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you may proceed.
So I'm a farmer and I have a couple of things to say about this particular ordinance, although I want to also say fantastic that you withdrew the other one, because I'm not really sure what the point of it was or what it was doing exactly. This particular ordinance seems related to that one. And if it is, then perhaps it should not be heard without some context. Specifically, as I believe the council is aware, state law allows farms to have roosters. So this particular ordinance, if read with its language, says any roosters is prohibited. That's going to become a problem as far as farm rights, right to farm, et cetera. So I call your attention to that because that is something you should be concerned about. That being said, a good and powerful chicken ordinance, which was passed by this council when it was the council that sat 10 years ago, would not allow roosters in a backyard situation. That makes sense. No one needs that. No one wants that. But it's very important for the distinction to be made that farms have the right to have roosters. And, that's very different than a backyard situation. And because the city at present has absolutely no ordinance regarding chicken keeping, this is a very risky position to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patton.
I see no other comments.
One last call, if anyone would like to be heard. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Last call, if there's anybody that would like to be heard on any matters tonight.
See no additional comment on Zoom.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to close public comment and we will address ordinance 9-21-04, the prohibition of roosters, sponsored by Councilwoman Renzulli. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilwoman?
So like was already brought up, we get several complaints about roosters. I believe it constitutes as a nuisance and unreasonably interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life and property for some of the people that spoke tonight. I would like to know from legal, however, if they have any guidance as far as what Ms. Patton said from the state and DEM's laws.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Council.
Yeah, the Right to Farm Act, which is located at Rhode Island General Laws, sections 2-23-1 et sec, needs to be observed here. Certainly, I think the ordinance should be amended to specifically state that with the exception of farming activities protected by Rhode Island General Laws, section 2-23-1 et sec, that the keeping of roosters is strictly prohibited. The rest of the ordinance is fine as it's written. If that change is made, it would certainly protect those engaged in a farming activity as authorized by federal and state law, and would seem to accomplish the aim of the authors of the ordinance, which seems to be the prohibition against quote unquote backyard roosters. Those would be my 2 cents.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman?
So I'm perfectly happy to make that amendment.
Madam Clerk, do we have to, can the motion to amend be for what Council Attorney stated on the record? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. I'll entertain a motion at this time relative to the amendment.
Motion to amend?
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Chairman.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, can we clarify what the amendment is for the record?
Council, could you put that on the record for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The amendment would be that except for activities protected by the Right to Farm Act codified at Rhode Island General Laws, section 2-23-1 et sec, comma, the keeping of any roosters is strictly prohibited, period. The rest of the ordinance stands.
Thank you, Council.
You're welcome.
Councilman Downey?
Thank you, Chairman. I guess it's more of a procedural question. As there's an amendment on the floor, is the public allowed to comment on the amendment? And the reason I ask is I'm not a farmer. Grown up in Eastern Cranston my whole life. I don't pretend to be a farmer, but I know there are some people well-versed and experienced in this on the call, and I'm wondering if any of them might have the opportunity to have any input on the ordinance as amended.
There is an account with their name here. Name is Jeff Salter.
So can you, oh, Ms. Salter, if you can just give
Hi.
us your name and address for the record.
Sure, my name is Jess Salter. I live at 6 Vaughn Lane.
And you may proceed.
Hi, my comment is merely that the land size should also be considered. It's great that the notice has been given that we have to acknowledge the right to farm in the state of Rhode Island. But for instance, if you own 100 acres and you aren't technically a farm, there should be no restriction on you having a rooster. I understand that the intent of this ordinance is to eliminate roosters from backyard settings, and I think that can be done in other ways other than just blanket elimination of having roosters in the city of Cranston. So possibly looking at lot sizes or land sizes, acreage would be great, in addition to actual registered farms.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to be heard on the amendment? Sir?
Yes, I think it should be restricted to those people who actually have a commercial use for the rooster other than, for lack of a better word, a pet or a casual need or desire to have fresh eggs. Lot size is important. If someone has 100 acres, I'm sure they could do that, but to call it a backyard and then someone says, hey, or in the case of where I live, the zoning is A80 and there's just a blurb in that zone that says agriculture. And I haven't been, and that's, I think, is what stopped the city all this time, because that area used to be a farming area. There were orchards, Pippin Orchards is there, and so on. If you're not running a farm and you have a half a dozen chickens and you want to get fresh eggs and you happen to have a rooster and you say, hey, I'm a farmer, I'm a chicken farmer, poultry farmer, I don't think that should fly in this case. If you were running a poultry farm at the end of Pippin Orchard Road, there is a poultry farm. And I think former Councilman Stikos was a farmer. And in discussions with him last year, he was actually going to introduce this ordinance on my behalf. But then, he didn't win. So that was the end of that. So the fact that somebody might have some acreage, I'm not saying if you have 100 acres, you shouldn't have a rooster. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 acres, which a lot of properties do up my area, that doesn't constitute a farm. And trust me, anybody who knows anything about roosters, you could have it 200 feet away from you and it'll go right through you. So I want to make that point clear. If you're not an actual farmer and that's what you do for a living, you shouldn't be allowed to disturb your neighbors. Thank you.
Anyone else in chambers that would like to be heard on the amendment? Is there anyone online? That would like
Yes,
to be
Ms.
heard on the
Patton.
amendment?
Thank you.
What's the-
Drake Patton, 684 Natick Avenue. I spoke before. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. I will be sort of restating a little bit what I said before, but I first want to support Jess Salter's comment about the size of property. And I want to say that because, again, 10 years ago, a very comprehensive ordinance was passed that addressed lot size, that really drilled down on the issues around chicken keeping in urban settings, which, by the way, happens across this country in cities like Providence, Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. This is happening across the country. So we can do this. This ordinance, again, is standing alone without context. And it seems like we have enough of a question. Mr. Paolino has his concerns. Other people have concerns about land size. No one should be disturbed by anything. But again, farms come in lots of sizes. Western Cranston is filled with them. How do we create a one size fits all ordinance? It seems quite difficult in this moment tonight to do that. The ordinance that was not heard tonight was not a successful ordinance. It needs to be completely turned over. And this should be connected to that so that there's a larger conversation that is more intelligent around what it means to keep chickens in various settings, whether that be a farm, commercial, or small, or whether that's a backyard. Again, this discussion happened 10 years ago and it was passed, but it was vetoed by Mayor Fung. I believe we could go back to that, start to think about that in a more comprehensive way, open it up to the public, the diverse public that we have, and come up with something much better. This seems premature and out of context. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patton.
Account name Beth.
Yeah. Hi, this is Richard Naraki, 59 Bryant Road, and to just speak out against what the last woman was saying is that I think we are covered when we talk about the farm and you know, if you're out there and you're in an agricultural setting. I think legally we are covered, and although she apparently isn't affected by these roosters, I can tell you if it was in your backyard, you'd want this done as soon as possible, and you'd want, you know, this addressed. I'm not, you know, trying to drag her feet, say we get a comprehensive plan about, you know, slot size. I think it's well stated in the state law about the need for the rooster, and you know who in the provision for that on a chicken farm. And she wants to debate what constitutes a farm, you know, and you know if and I think that's aptly applied, you know, when you declare your house a farm. So I think we're covered there, and no real need to go any further with that train of thought, you know, in that line of thinking there. That's what I want to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Deputy McCauley.
Thank you, Chairman. If we follow what council suggested and follow the state law, I think we're fine. The description of farmland for the state is described by 4 different items. It can fall under any one of these. Land which is actually actively devoted to agricultural or horticultural use, agricultural operations. Land which constitutes a farm unit, which means land owned by the farmer, including woodlands and wetlands, at least 5 acres of which are actively devoted to agricultural and horticultural use, which have produced an annual gross income from the sale of its farm products of at least $2,500 in one of the 2 preceding years. I think if we follow these guidelines, we're fine. That's the state's description of farmland. So
Thank you.
I think if you follow the council's suggestion with the amendment, we're good to go. Thank you.
And let me just check, is there, before we close public comment on the amendment, is there anyone online or in chambers that would like to be heard? At this time, I'm going to close public comment as to that amendment and open it up for discussion. Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Chairman. I would, I'm conflicted because I agree that there are places that roosters likely are needed and should be allowed, and there are other places where they shouldn't be. I'm not an expert in agricultural legislation. I'm not going to sit here tonight and pretend to be, but having been on the council for, you know, now in my 2nd term, I think I'm not usually one to say this, but I think this is a time where we should pause for a moment. And rather than do this piecemeal, whereas we have a rooster ordinance, a chicken ordinance at some date, we do this together in a comprehensive manner. There are clearly people from every side of the issue with varying degrees and diverse opinions on the issue, with diverse experiences on the issue, that can provide input, opinions, and some expertise to get this right, rather than trying to do this tonight. The intention of the ordinance is well, I know that, and I'm not saying this because I'm opposed to the ordinance. I'm saying I think we should look at a comprehensive proposal on chickens and roosters and where they should be and where they shouldn't be, rather than doing part of it tonight and part of it another night where it doesn't really make sense without the other part. I really think we should just take a step back, get everyone at the table who knows what they're doing on this. That's not a slight at anyone here, and get this right.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Marino?
Thank you. While very much to Councilman Donegan's point, I think it suits us all well to take the time to get this done properly. And I can specifically address two concerns that I haven't heard mentioned tonight, which are concerning to me. And before I say that, I sympathize with the plight of people that have roosters crowing just as much as I would if someone had a dog barking at close proximity to your house. And you know, this is our job to be creative and coming up with a solution to that as best we can. And if the goal is to eliminate that nuisance or whatever you'd like to call it, then it needs to be done in a responsible way. And I don't see that we'll be able to do that tonight, but maybe I'm wrong. A couple of concerns I have is with respect to the legal implications of grandfathering. You know, what are we to do with someone who is unfortunately already in possession of a rooster? Do we have, you know, the legal ability to do anything about that? Unfortunately, I don't want to give these poor people a false sense of hope, because, you know, we may not be able to apply this retroactively, which in effect would be what that is. And I'll leave that for legal counsel. But the other question I have is with respect to enforcement. It's wonderful to tell the public that we're going to cure your problem, but we can't just go in rogue and say, hey, I'm going to take your rooster. We need to know the proper mechanism. Are there, you know, particular licenses? Are there union issues? Do we need special personnel? Do they have to be put in a certain location? Where do they go? So these are all pieces to the puzzle that we need to hash out if we're going to move on this effectively as a body in a responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Council?
To Council Donegan's point about expertise in the Farm Act, if you had asked me these questions 5 months ago, I would not have been well suited to answer this question for you. But I happen to be involved in a case in another municipality, representing the municipality, where the very issue focuses around the application of the Farm Act. So I feel somewhat uniquely qualified to provide you with a legal opinion on it. And that's why I had suggested the amendment that I did. The Right to Farm Act isn't a Rhode Island invention. It comes from federal law. And if you are to be a farm in Rhode Island, you must exist in an area where the zoning is proper to permit a farming activity, number one. And number two, you have to file with RIDEM, Agriculture Division, to obtain an approved farm plan to tell them precisely what it is you're going to do on this farm in layman's terms. Are you going to raise chickens? Are you going to have dairy cows, pigs, whatever the case may be? And that farm plan is renewable every 10 years. In addition, by the way, those that do have farms are entitled to a different tax status when it comes to taxing their property and taxing their tangibles and so forth. So within the structure of zoning, if you will, Councilwoman Marino had alluded to enforcement. Your zoning enforcement officer is charged with enforcing the code of zoning ordinances in your city. As I read this ordinance, and I'm not going to speak for the sponsors as to what their intent was, but it stated on the record here tonight would seem to be to address the problems of this particular gentleman in the first row and others who live next door to someone in a residential area, not zoned for farming, not operating a farm, who have roosters, period. Again, whether this council decides to take this issue up in the larger context of dealing with related issues is another story. But as this ordinance it stands before you as amended, it stands on solid legal footing. Now, with respect to Councilwoman Marino's concern with respect to those who already own roosters, I don't have an opinion on that as I stand here because that's not something I contemplated, truthfully. But, you know, I'll go back 20 some odd years ago when the first adult entertainment statute was passed in Rhode Island, and the constitutional argument made by existing adult establishment owners was that we already exist where we are. You can't tell us how to behave where we are, and you can't tell us to go to a particular area within your municipality. Well, they were wrong. The state Supreme Court ruled differently, and that particular constitutional ruling has been upheld at the United States Supreme Court level. So I wish Mr. Videcki were here because, quite frankly, he and I were on the same side of the coin on that one, successfully so. So as this stands here, I certainly don't see a problem with this. With respect to folks who already own roosters, that's a question I'd like an opportunity to work with the solicitor and provide a legal opinion to you on. But as to addressing the obvious problem of, you know, a residential homeowner owning roosters, this seems to do that and respect the rights of those who are protected under the Right to Farm Act. Now, that said, you know, you may want to consider this in a larger context. You may not. That is entirely, you know, a political decision at the will of the council, certainly. There was another question, I think, Councilwoman, that you had raised. I wanted to make sure that I had addressed your questions.
Thank you. Yes, the other aspect was with respect to enforcement in terms of, I don't pretend to be an expert, but I don't know if there are state regulations and laws with respect to the housing of those, you know, roosters once they are caught. And I imagine that there are.
I'm sure that there are. I mean, just like when animal control takes possession of animals on anyone's property, there was a point raised about acreage in this discussion. Be clear that the Farm Act, the federal and state Farm Acts control. If you're a farm and the federal and state act says that you can be a farm on a postage stamp, then that's the way it goes. Or if a certain amount of acreage is required, that's the way that it goes. And the purpose really behind the Farm Act is that for folks who are in the proper zone, engaged in a legitimate farming activity, those who come to the nuisance, if you will, by living next door to the smell of manure and the noise of animals, well, if they're a legitimate farm, tough luck, you came to the nuisance. But in this instance, as the facts are described, and this obviously an ordinance like this is designed, as I see it, and as explained by Councilwoman Renzulli, to speak for those people who are being spoken to at 4 a.m. by a residential rooster. So that's how I view this. If the council chooses to view it in a larger scope and a larger context, that certainly is well within the rights of the council to do so.
Thank you. Councilwoman Jermaine.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, I understand the sentiment of Councilman Renzulli with this ordinance because there is an issue in the city that we all as council, we know what it is that we want to get to the bottom of that. But the problem, the issue is not about the chickens or it's not about the rooster. It's about the enforcement of the law. That's the problem we have. That's where we need to start. The enforcement, because as Council Welly and I and Council Wensley, we are working on an ordinance about dog owners issue. Police officer did not have the provision really to enforce the law. Somewhere they have, probably because of resources, the work has not done. So we have a problem of enforcement. So I don't think we need to restrict people. The law already said you cannot have in your backyard. But if you have the lands, I concur with this woman, Mrs. Jakin. If you have the ability, I don't think we should restrict somebody if you have the ability. So where we need to work is the nuisance. So if you have we say it's a nuisance to your neighbor, we should take action. I don't think punish the constituents, prohibited constituent to own something. I don't think it's the right way. It's how we go in to enforce the law. How we go in to make sure when someone is a nuisance for your neighbor and you pay for that. I think that's where we need to go because I am on that process. So we need to figure out how to enforce, how to make sure when you're not complying and you pay. That's where we need to start. So that's why the way, because I am against nuisance, because we have dog barking, we have all kinds of nuisance in the city. So we do not find a way yet to really enforce inspection, for example. We have a lot of problem enforcement. The problem is enforcement, nothing else. So now I think we can convene to make sure we find ways for the enforcement part, but the law already said you cannot have you can have chicken or rooster. So I think we need to work together to find a way to enforcement. So the way the ordinance is right now, I think I would advise we can continue to come back with more ways to make sure we address the problem, the enforcement problem. Thank you.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
So I would ask Attorney Angel, as far as I understand it, and I could be incorrect, when DEM, says there's a farm, they go out there, they test the animals, they're in charge of the enforcement. So to my understanding, you could have 100 acres of land, but if you're not a farm, DEM is not going out there and testing your flock or paying attention to what you're doing. So why you need a rooster in the first place, I'm not sure, but you can't just have whatever you want spreading bird flu or whatever else everywhere just because you decided that you have a ton of land and you purchased it. So that's where I am at with that. And I see how this could go with the chicken ordinance, but I don't think it necessarily has to. And I would like to try and pass this tonight to give, I want relief for the people who have been living with this nuisance for years and not getting anything solved. So Drake Patton might come back on 5 more times and talk to us about chickens. I don't want this to go 6 more months because we can't pass the chicken ordinance necessarily. And I'm totally open to that. And there were just oversights made on that ordinance. And that's why it didn't make sense. So I propose that we go with this tonight for the roosters with the amendment by council. Thank you.
Thank you.
speak?
Yes, Councilman Ferry.
Okay. I fully understand that we need to do something to resolve this problem for the people that are having a problem. But getting back to what Councilman Donegan said, and getting back to what Drake Pattern said, there exists an ordinance that was passed by the city council 10 years ago that covers everything. Lot size, farm size, how many, who's where, that covers the whole thing. Many people spent many hours writing that ordinance. I would be in favor of passing the amended ordinance tonight that Attorney Angel recommended, but we really need to take a look at what exists already. We're not experts on this. There are people that are experts on it. So they need to tell us who should have chickens, how many they should have, what's lot size. That's something that they spent many, many hundreds of hours writing 10 years ago. And nothing's changed in that. So I would be in favor of passing the amended ordinance tonight to resolve the immediate issue, but we really need to take a look at what is already on paper. We're not experts on this. We're going to spend weeks, months, hours wasting our time, wasting everybody's time. We need to do this right. So I agree with Councilman Donegan. We need to do it right.
Council President?
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Vice President Furr. I think we should pass this tonight. I think we can separate the roosters and chickens. I think that's a more comprehensive ordinance that might need some more work. But I think that, I know I've visited Mr. Paolino's property. And I know what he's going through, and I know what a lot of other residents in the city that have called me that are dealing with roosters in their neighborhood on a daily basis, all day, sometimes all night. So I certainly agree with that. I think the amendment that council provided tonight is good. So I will be voting for this tonight. I think it's a good step. I mean, there's another hearing too to this process. It's not a done deal tonight. It will go to the full council. Public comment again will be allowed on this. So we can certainly take some more input on it, and but I will be voting to pass this on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, hold on one moment. So Councilwoman Vargas, have you spoken on this yet?
I have not.
All right, so Councilwoman Vargas, please go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I have to say, while Rooster, the red hen, right? Interesting enough, we're having this conversation. You know, I am actually, I don't know too much about roosters, just like very much some of my council colleagues. You know, I'm not a farmer. I'm not too much aware of the entire issue. I don't even know if any other cities or towns have any type of ordinance that excludes roosters from the city at all. You know, but at the same time, I am going to defer to the solicitor. I'm going to vote in support of this ordinance this evening so it can go before the full council as amended, so everyone can still have the opportunity, as council president actually suggested, to speak on this actual issue. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be able to provide my support for this ordinance that evening or vote whether again in favor or against it. But I really feel the way it stands with that amendment, at least we're advertising, we're letting everyone know. And it'll give us an opportunity as well that if there's any additional amendments perhaps between now and then that could be provided at the floor the day of the council meeting. One thing that I think I just had a question to the solicitor, to our city council, legal counsel, is if it goes to the full council, at that point, are we're not able to then recommend it back to committee, or can we do that if it goes before the council and there's additional suggested language or information that comes before us whatsoever that we want to refer it back to committee?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it certainly can be referred back to committee. But anything other than a ministerial floor amendment should be sent back to committee and probably re-advertised. So, you know, given the nature of the topic and its interrelationship to other things, my advice would be, you know, that if you do vote it out of committee and there is any sort, if you do vote this out of committee and you have to pay attention to the stenographer. They tell you when to speak and when to speak up. And so you can, if you vote this out of committee and it goes to the floor of the council, it can certainly be amended, but any substantive amendment would need to be sent back to the committee, this particular committee, for consideration. And it would, I believe, necessitate a re-advertisement depending upon how comprehensive that amendment is. So
Great, thank you so much. Again, I'm going to support this evening as amended. Clearly on roosters, this is not about chicken or hens at this moment, but it's strictly about the roosters and amended. And looking forward to hearing from the sponsor, the public as well, and continue to get educated on this actual issue coming before us. Thank you.
Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. I have one question that was like thinking about it. What will happen if someone who has a chicken and they have roosters? Do they have to kill them? What's gonna happen? What, based on this? That's my issue. As is it now. So if someone has you have, and then they give you 5 roosters, what's gonna happen to those 5 roosters? Do you have a provision to say what's gonna happen? That's why I would like to see if we can continue, we find always doing.
Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So certainly the ordinance doesn't require anybody to kill anything. That's number one. And, you know, it's as if, you know, someone said you can't have a dog anymore. You have the right to find a home for the dog. If they're engaged in a farming activity, and that's the reason why they have roosters and chickens together, then this doesn't apply to them. It's that simple. But if they have roosters and chickens living next door to Mr. Paolino, this ordinance, if passed, would mean that, you know, the rooster can't live there anymore. We haven't addressed the chicken issue.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Donovan?
Thank you, Chairman. To piggyback off of my colleague's question right there, I think raises a question. I mean, it's one thing to say roosters prohibited. It's another thing to enforce it. And what does enforcement look like? And is there a step? You know, is there a process for enforcement? Are there fines involved? Is there the opportunity to challenge a said violation? We usually include some opportunity for that in most of the at least most of the legislation that I've seen pass from this committee. We're going to pass an ordinance that just says something's prohibited without actually enumerating how it's going to be enforced and what that looks like. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's a good precedent to set by a committee to send something that just isn't complete.
Mr. Chairman, by state law and by ordinance, you have a zoning enforcement officer in this city that is charged with enforcement of all zoning ordinances, okay, and ordinances of this kind. And the right of appeal, there is a right of appeal, and the municipal right of appeal of an action by the zoning enforcement officer is to the zoning board of review sitting in its appellate capacity. That's a state law. So, and if they don't agree with the decision of the zoning board of review sitting in its appellate capacity, then they have an appeal by right to the state superior court.
You, Councilwoman Marina?
Thank you. If I can, to Councilor Angel, I understand that zoning has the role of enforcement, but practically speaking, someone has a rooster, zoning goes there, they take it. Where does it go? As we sit here tonight, I don't know the answer to that question. But I could be wrong in this, I believe there may be state laws with respect to where that bird can go. Like, for example, we have the animal shelter. I do not believe under state law that those birds can go there. So that's something that I think needs to be fleshed out before this gets
First
approved.
things
Thank
first,
you.
if I may, your zoning enforcement officer does not have the authority to do anything other than to conduct an investigation, to make findings, and then to issue a notice of violation of the zoning code. They don't have the authority to take possession of someone's animal, just to be clear on that. To answer the second half of your question, as I stated when I stood at the podium, I don't know the answer to that as I stand here. I don't know where they would go. I don't know. Certainly, if a notice of violation were issued, and a cease and desist issued, obviously the owner of the animal proceeds at their peril to continue to house the animal. It continues to be an ongoing violation. But that animal stays where it is, as far as I would be concerned, until the appellate process has run its course. Unless there's something else in state law somewhere that, I haven't reached for in the recess of my mind tonight. And I'm not going to tell you I know the answer to that. This is not a dog. This is not a domestic animal any more than, and I don't know what the rules are if someone had a crocodile living in their basement. I mean, where would we put one of those? I don't know. Councilman Riley is smiling, but I think you can see my point. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to find that out.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Councilman. Just my thoughts on this. I am going to support this tonight. I don't feel that this is connected as much to the chicken ordinance. I think there's very different reasons for these ordinances, and they're different animals. In terms of the amendments, and people 10 years ago worked very hard to come up with the requirements back then, which that ordinance didn't pass. Well, it was passed, but then vetoed. We're overlooking the fact that very smart people at the federal level, very smart people at the state level have already done all this. We don't have to do it. It's already been done. It's the Federal Right to Farm Act. So for us to say, we need to sit here and we need to get these experts, and we're one city in one state of a country. This stuff has already been figured out by, I'm presuming, experts at the Senate and Congress level. So I'm more than happy to move forward, like Council said, with the language he suggested in that amendment. So I don't see a need to slow it down, to bring more people into the kitchen to add to this. It's pretty straightforward. There's an animal, creates a lot of noise, disturbs people greatly. And one of the greatest rights a person has as a property right is to the quiet enjoyment of their property. And as a city council, we owe that to our citizens. So, and I haven't heard I've heard people that are against this ordinance, but I haven't heard any testimony as to why a non-farmer needs to have a rooster. There are things that are not illegal, but that are not within the zoning of the city. This clearly is not something we're supposed to have in residential areas. They can be on farms though. And wonderfully, farms have already been defined. We have that, it's there, and it's already done. So I think this is ready to go. I don't see any reason to belabor it, and I'll be supporting it tonight. Thank you. Is there any further comment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
No.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
And now I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And Council President?
Thank you. This just adds another alternate to the makeup of the body. Sometimes there's quorum issues with some of the boards, and that's all this does.
Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
All right, moving on to 9-21-07. Ordinance sponsored by Councilwoman Vargas and Council President Paplaskas regarding cemeteries. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilwoman Vargas?
Thank you through the chair. The ordinance that has come before us this evening, or that's before us this evening, is pretty much, obviously a 7-page paper ordinance. Not sure if there are any questions, but the point of this is to make sure that private cemeteries in particular are able to be held accountable for the sole purpose of avoiding a cemetery from becoming abandoned or neglected. And so we have roughly over 160 or so cemeteries, not all private, but within that 160, 65 or so, some are public, some are state, and obviously some are pretty much unknown or abandoned as well. And so here in the city, we have about 3 or so lots or cemeteries, if you will, that are owned by the city. The exemptions of those cemeteries that will not be affected is on line 277, which would be religious, Cranston Historical Cemetery, public cemeteries, and abandoned cemeteries as well, in addition to active buildings that are used regularly in active religious celebration. What I'm trying to do, or my goal is to have the private cemeteries be able to file within the city clerk's office their revenues, where pretty much their financial status on it, but also be able to provide their plotting of their mapping, right? How many people what's the mapping? Who's buried where? We want to make sure that we're able to hold a private cemetery, which is pretty much a business running on its own, accountable. My hope is that in my ward in particular, I know there's a private cemetery, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear that in this ordinance in particular, it's not pointing fingers at one or singling out one specific cemetery or another, but it's overall private cemeteries to avoid them from being neglected, as I mentioned earlier, and even mausoleums as well. We don't own the mausoleum over in Ward 1, but there are a couple of other mausoleums in the city. And so by doing so, of registering, where the loved ones of so many are buried, and the budget and budgetary, I should say, financial conditions of the cemeteries, we're able to hold private cemeteries accountable on this. A lot of, I should say, there's some language in here which is taken by the Rhode Island General Law on cemeteries, which is Title 23, Chapter 23 to 18. But there's also language on here that'll allow us to do a lot of enforcement within our private cemeteries on here as well. I have to say that this has been an ongoing in progress, if you will, on the actual ordinance itself. I got on the council in 2019, and I started looking into this matter. As a matter of fact, Senator Josh Miller from District 28, who's actually represents, he's my senator over in Ward 1, who, thank you for speaking on behalf and support of this ordinance, has been working with me, as well as other state reps whose family are also laid to rest there. And I've been getting a lot of phone calls on just private cemeteries in general. Let's just make sure that we hold private cemeteries accountable. If those private cemeteries that are well kept, those cemeteries that don't have to worry about their operational expenses or providing us with their filing, shouldn't be worried whatsoever. So again, the perpetual care of the cemeteries and mausoleum is noted on here. The exceptions of who's going to be exempt from this is on here. The spread of ashes as well on private cemeteries is also noted on this actual document, on this ordinance before us. And one of the things I do want to know on the filing of this ordinance is that the city clerk would then review such filing that would be provided to the office or the mayor's office, where the private cemetery, the owner of the private cemetery, would have to disclose whether or not they have insufficient revenues to meet budgeted expenses. I mean, right now, when you own a business, you do file already with the Secretary of State, you do your annual filing and so forth. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do that with us here in the city. And their OSHA should be reporting whether or not they have less than 25 plots or niches that are applicable and remaining available for sale. Again, once we have that filing, it'll allow us to continue to also enforce and keep private owners of the cemeteries in burial places accountable before we start seeing them going downhill. And then we'll have to figure out what we're going to be doing from there, how we're going to act as an actual council on cemeteries that are being neglected. So this would enforce current cemeteries and anyone who was to actually get into the cemetery business for, if you will, to make sure that we're able to not only enable the Rhode Island general laws, but as a city also do it. And I do hope that if this passes out of committee, and if it happens to even pass out of the city council, that at the state level, it would also be introduced and passed there as well, because I have heard from other cities and towns where they too are actually coming across situations of private owned cemeteries that are starting to be neglected or have been neglected and have become abandoned. And then at that point, it'd be so late in the game to actually trying to really enforce and be much harder to go after their perpetual care, which has been ongoing with at least one of the cases that has come before us here in the city. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Council President.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Councilmember Vargas for all the hard work she put into this. I know over the years, it's certainly been an ongoing issue. That's not just a Ward 1 issue, but certainly something you've been working on, and I'm happy to co-sponsor and support this ordinance. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say thank you to Councilwoman Vargas. Most of the time when I go drive down to Broad Street and I like looking at this side of cemetery, I was like, I feel like so sad already. And to know you have someone, I have a family member down there. And it's always saddened me to see in the condition this side of the cemetery. So this is need. It was so much due. It's time, and I will anything I can do. We will need to make sure this is not happening. For respect to our loved ones. So when you lay someone down, it should be respected and well kept. It's not because the person is not alive anymore and just treat it like, it's really saddening to see that. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that.
Any other comments? I'll just say I fully support this. I think, it's a travesty whenever you see a dilapidated and cemetery, private or public, when you pass by it, definitely is a blight on the community. Just as Councilwoman Jermaine said, it's sad to drive by. The only piece that I do want to look into a little more before the full council is the having to provide the financial data. That's just, I wanted to put that out there. Maybe we can talk about that.
But other than that, I strongly support this. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, that was a piece, just so the council knows, every piece of this has been tied back to state law. So I'm more than comfortable that we have the authority to do just that. And that was also a concern of mine. I know you wear a hat as a lawyer during the day and you can't help, but leave it on at night too. I understand that. So yeah, your concern is well founded, but we have the authority to do it.
Great. Thank you so much for letting me know. Seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Oh, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And Councilman Ferry?
We would like to see a three-way stop at the intersection of Harrison and Vinton Avenue. We've gotten many complaints from the neighbors, and we feel that this is an issue that'll help resolve that problem. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yes, Councilwoman Jermaine?
Yeah. Council, usually I was told that you need a review and it's a study for, usually that's what I heard, so we did not a study for that one? Traffic.
There has been a traffic study done there. In Vinton.
There's not one on the docket.
I don't see in the docket, that's why I asked.
Councilman Ferry, would you be open to continuing this to allow for the traffic study to be filed? Or
Why
did you
do
wanna
we
move
have to do a
forward tonight?
traffic study?
I'm sorry, I didn't finish.
Yeah.
If I can. I think in the past, what we've done sometimes is that we're able to pass it to the full council contingent on the traffic study being presented and before us. If that's, we've done that before, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that tonight.
Yeah, we're supposed to by charter give them 60 days to produce it. So you might have it by the full council meeting. That's a couple weeks away. So.
Perfect. Okay.
Will he automatically do a traffic study when he sees this?
I'll leave that to the President.
If the 60 days expires, we can just pass it without a traffic study.
Because you know what he's going to say in the traffic study. Yes, I would like to amend the ordinance. No, pass it on to full council and then we'll vote on it with the traffic study.
So I'll make that motion. I'll withdraw my other motion. I'll make that motion for the sponsor.
Second.
It's a motion to send it to the full council pending a traffic study.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
And I would just ask the administration if they could provide notice for this traffic study. Hopefully, it would be great if we could get it for the full council. If not, we understand.
Can I ask a question through the chair? I am curious, is there no trigger when someone puts something forward for there to be a traffic study? Sometimes there is one, so I'm curious. So.
I think all the department heads are on the email for the referred business that comes from the clerk's office. So if they scan that, you'll see any ordinances that are in there.
Okay, thank you.
And
Just for the record, there has been a traffic study. I have been back and forth with Steve Mulcahy on this, and the residents just will not let up on wanting something done. So, I'm not gonna try and hide the fact that I'm trying to stick a stop sign in the middle of the street to stop people from going 36 miles. That was the average speed of this traffic study, was 36 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone.
I do remember that, so maybe we can just get that emailed to us before the next council meeting.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't attach it.
I said, I do remember that, so if we can just get that emailed to us.
I did send it to everyone.
You know what, though? I think that might have been the average speed on the road. I don't think it was the official report from the sign from the engineer.
Thank you. And thank you, Deputy. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?